The first rule every human delegate learned before entering the Galactic Assembly was simple. Do not touch anyone unless you were invited to do so. It was written in the manuals, repeated in training simulations, and drilled into their minds during the long journey from Earth. In space, touch meant many things. Among some species, it was an insult. Among others, it was a challenge. And for a few, it was something far worse. Elias Rowan knew the rule well. He had memorized it like everything else he was expected to know. As a junior diplomatic observer, his job was not to speak, not to act, and certainly not to interfere. He was there to watch, learn, and record. Humanity was new to the wider galaxy, and mistakes were expensive. The Galactic Assembly Hall was larger than any structure Elias had ever imagined. It was not built upward like Earth cities, but outward, stretching in layers and curves that followed no human logic. Light flowed instead of shone, drifting gently from unseen sources. The air itself felt alive, adjusted perfectly for every species present. Dozens of beings occupied the chamber. Some floated, some walked on many limbs, others stood perfectly still like living statues. Translation fields hummed softly, turning unknown sounds into understandable words inside Elias' mind. At the center of the hall stood Princess Sailira of the Virelian Concord. She did not look fragile, but there was something about her presence that made the room feel cautious. The Virelians were tall, silver-skinned beings with smooth features and eyes that reflected light like glass over deep water. Sailira wore no crown, no visible symbols of power, yet everyone knew who she was. Her position was not political alone. It was biological. The Virelians had evolved differently from most intelligent species. Long ago, when their civilization nearly destroyed itself through internal control and rigid perfection, nature itself had responded. Their leaders became living safeguards. The royal bloodline carried a defensive mechanism, one tied to touch, intent, and proximity. No one was entirely sure how it worked, only that it worked absolutely. That was why the room was quiet. Sailira was speaking calmly, her voice even and clear as she addressed the assembly. She spoke of trade routes, shared research, and mutual defense against the growing threats beyond mapped space. Her words were peaceful, but beneath them ran tension. The Virelians were powerful, and their alliance mattered. Elias stood behind the human delegation, hands clasped, posture careful. He had been chosen because he was good at staying unnoticed. He had a talent for observing details without drawing attention to himself. That was why he noticed it first. Sailira's hand trembled. It was subtle, a slight pause, a fraction of a second where her posture shifted. No alarms sounded, no guards reacted, but Elias saw it. Her eyes lost focus for just a moment, like someone fighting a sudden wave of dizziness. The human ambassador continued speaking, unaware. The other species watched politely, trusting the Virelian princess to remain composed as she always did. But Elias felt something change in the air. The translation field around Sailira flickered, not visibly, but emotionally. A faint pressure brushed against Elias' thoughts like static before a storm. He frowned slightly, unsure if he was imagining it. Sailira's breathing slowed. Her fingers curled, then relaxed. She took a careful step forward, and this time it was impossible to ignore. Several alien delegates shifted, their attention sharpening. She raised her hand. "Pause," Sailira said. The word echoed through the chamber. Every voice fell silent at once. "I must issue a warning," she continued, her tone still controlled but now strained. "There is a resonance fluctuation." The assembly reacted instantly. Security fields adjusted. Guards moved closer, though they kept a respectful distance. The human ambassador froze mid-sentence, confusion crossing his face. Elias felt the pressure grow stronger. His chest tightened, not with fear exactly, but with concern. He had seen people look like this before, scientists pushing themselves too hard, soldiers ignoring injuries until it was too late. Sailira turned her gaze toward the human delegation. "Humans," she said, "your presence is unusual. You adapt quickly, sometimes too quickly." The ambassador inclined his head. "We apologize if—" "This is not an accusation," Sailira interrupted. "It is a fact." Her eyes shifted, locking onto Elias. He stiffened. He had done nothing. He was certain of it, yet it felt as if she was looking directly at him, not as a representative of Earth, but as an individual. "You," she said softly. Elias swallowed. Every instinct told him to stay still, to avoid attention. But her gaze held him in place. "Yes, princess," he managed. "Do not move," she said. "Do not come closer. Whatever happens next, you must not touch me." The words sent a ripple of unease through the room. Elias nodded immediately. "Of course." Salira took a slow breath. "My biology is reacting to an unknown variable. Physical contact would trigger a defense response. It cannot be stopped once activated." "What would happen?" the ambassador asked carefully. "Sale involvement, what happens, question may be okay." Salira hesitated. "History." That answer did not calm anyone. Her posture faltered again. This time the tremor traveled up her arm and into her shoulders. A faint glow traced along the markings in her skin, lines that had been decorative moments ago but now pulsed with inner light. Alarms began to sound, low and controlled. The assembly's automated systems recognized a threat state. "Medical intervention?" one delegate asked. "No," Salira said firmly. "It would require touch." The glow intensified. The pressure in Elias' mind sharpened into something clearer now, not pain, but emotion. Fear tightly controlled, determination layered over exhaustion. She was holding something back. Elias didn't think. He reacted. He stepped forward. "Stop," Salira said sharply. "Do you know what happens if you touch me?" "Yes," Elias replied honestly. "Something bad." "That is not sufficient knowledge," she said. She swayed. The movement was small, but enough. Her balance shifted just enough that she would fall if nothing changed. Guards tensed but did not move. Their orders were absolute. Elias felt time stretch. He could stop. He could obey. He could watch her fall and let history continue exactly as planned, or he could do what humans had always done when someone was about to collapse. He reached out. His hand closed around her arm. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. The chamber seemed to inhale. Then the light exploded, not outward but inward. The glow vanished into Salira's skin, and the pressure in Elias' mind snapped into sharp clarity. Images flooded his thoughts. Vast cities frozen in perfect order, generations repeating the same mistakes because they were afraid to change, leaders bound by rules written by the dead. Salira gasped, but she did not fall. Elias felt heat not burning but warmth, like standing in sunlight after a long winter. His vision blurred. He tightened his grip instinctively, steadying her. The alarms stopped. Silence crashed down harder than noise ever could. Salira straightened slowly. The glow did not return. Instead, something else appeared in her eyes, focused, sharp, and new. She looked at Elias' hand on her arm, then she looked up at him. "You touched me," she said. "Yes," Elias replied. His voice shook now. "I'm sorry." The guards moved, but Salira lifted her hand, stopping them. "No," she said quietly. "You are not." She turned to the assembly. Every being present was watching, stunned. "The catalyst has occurred," she announced. "What catalyst?" someone demanded. Salira did not answer immediately. She studied Elias as if seeing him for the first time. "Remove your hand," she said gently. He did. Nothing exploded. No defenses activated. The world did not end, but Elias knew deep in his bones that something had changed. The princess took a steadying breath. "This human acted without calculation, without permission, without fear of consequence." She paused. "And yet I remain." The chamber erupted in overlapping voices. Elias stepped back, heart pounding. He wanted to disappear, to rewind the last 10 seconds of his life. Salira raised her voice and silence returned. "History told us that contact would destroy," she said, "but history did not account for humanity." Her gaze swept the room. "Proceed with caution," she added. "From this moment forward, the rules are uncertain." Elias realized then that he was no longer an observer. He was part of the story now. And whatever happened next would never be undone. No one spoke for several long seconds after Princess Salira declared that the rules were now uncertain. The Galactic Assembly Hall, once full of quiet motion and layered sound, felt frozen. Even the light drifting across the curved ceiling seemed to slow, as if the structure itself was listening. Elias stood where he was, unsure if moving would make things worse. His heart was still racing, his mind replaying the moment his hand touched the princess's arm. He had expected pain, alarms, something dramatic and violent. Instead, there had been warmth, images, and a strange sense of clarity that he could not explain. Salira remained steady. She no longer looked like someone struggling to hold herself upright. Whatever weakness had been there before was gone. In its place was alertness, sharp and focused, as if something inside her had finally aligned. The Virelian guards were the first to break protocol. They stepped forward in perfect unison, forming a loose barrier around their princess. Their weapons stayed lowered, but their posture was rigid, defensive. "The human must be contained," one of the elder delegates said, its voice echoing through the translation field. "We cannot allow an uncontrolled variable to remain free." Several others agreed at once. Words like contamination, biological breach, and mimetic risk filled the air. Elias finally moved, taking a small step backward. His training screamed at him to remain calm, but fear had started to creep in. He was not a hero. He had not acted to prove anything. He had simply reacted like a human always did. Celira raised her hand again. "Enough," she said. Her voice carried authority now, not just status. The overlapping voices faded one by one. "He will not be harmed," she continued, "nor will he be isolated without cause. With respect, Princess," another delegate said carefully, "cause has already been established." Celira turned her head slightly, considering. "No, assumption has been established, cause has not." She looked toward Elias again. This time there was no warning in her eyes, there was curiosity. "You are afraid," she said to him. "Yes," Elias answered honestly. "Good," she replied. "That means the bond did not overwrite your sense of self." The word bond sent a new ripple through the chamber. Elias frowned. "Bond?" The Virelian guard stiffened, but Celira did not stop. "Escort us," she said calmly. "I require a private assessment chamber. The human will accompany me." "That is unacceptable," the elder delegate replied. "It is unavoidable," Celira said. "You all felt it. The activation did not follow expected patterns. That alone makes this a matter of survival for my people." Silence followed again, heavier this time. Finally, the assembly systems chimed. A decision had been reached not by vote, but by protocol priority. A living safeguards request overruled diplomatic objection. "Motion approved," the system announced. Elias felt his knees weaken slightly. He was leaving the hall with an alien princess whose biology was tied to ancient disasters, and no one could tell him what had just happened to him. The walk through the corridors felt unreal. The assembly hall's vast openness gave way to smooth, enclosed passageways lined with shifting light patterns. Virelian guards surrounded them, while human security followed at a careful distance. Celira walked beside Elias, her steps calm and measured. "You did not hesitate," she said quietly. "I didn't have time to," Elias replied. "You were going to fall." "Yes," she said, "and yet you did not calculate the cost. I knew there would be consequences." She glanced at him. "Yet you touch me anyway." "Yes." That seemed to satisfy her. They entered a circular chamber designed for biological analysis. The walls adjusted instantly, adapting to Virelian physiology while keeping conditions safe for humans. Soft light settled over the room. The guards stopped at the entrance. Celira gestured for Elias to step inside. When the door sealed behind them, the silence felt different, not tense but focused. Celira moved toward the center platform and closed her eyes. Thin lines of light appeared around her, scanning, measuring, analyzing. Elias stood awkwardly near the wall, unsure where to put his hands. "You may speak freely here," she said. "No recordings, no observers." Elias exhaled slowly. "Then please tell me what I did." Celira opened her eyes. "You interrupted a deadlock," she said. She explained slowly, choosing words the translation field could easily handle. Her species had evolved their royal line as a response to fear. Long ago, Virelian leaders had tried to control every outcome, every emotion, every variable. Their civilization stagnated, then began to collapse. The defense mechanism encoded into their leaders was meant to prevent domination, manipulation, and forced change. Touch was the trigger. Touch meant intent. "For thousands of cycles," Celira said, "any unauthorized contact activated rejection, neural overload, defensive collapse, death." Elias swallowed. "But I didn't mean to control you." "I know," she said. "That is the anomaly." The scans around her flickered. "The system searched for domination," she continued. "For command, for ownership, it found none." Elias frowned. "I just wanted to help." "Yes," Celira said softly, "and that was enough." She stepped down from the platform and faced him. "When you touched me, the system could not classify your intent. You acted without hierarchy, without authority, without expectation of outcome." "That's normal for us," Elias said. Celira tilted her head. "It is terrifying." The chamber lights dimmed slightly as the scans completed. Celira's expression shifted as data flowed into her awareness. "The defense did not activate," she said. "Instead, it adapted." Elias felt a strange sensation in his chest, like pressure releasing. Am I changed? She considered this. Not altered, linked. The word made his stomach tighten. Our neural patterns briefly synchronized, she explained. Not permanently, but enough for data exchange. Data? Elias asked. Celira's eyes reflected the light again, deeper now. Emotion, memory. Context, she paused. I saw your people, she said. Your history, Elias stiffened. Humanity did not hide its past, but it was not something they liked others to examine closely. You are chaos, she said, painful, inefficient, repeating mistakes endlessly. That did not surprise him, but you move forward anyway, she added, even when logic says you should stop. Elias let out a small, nervous laugh. We're bad at stopping. Yes, Celira agreed, and that is why the system changed. A soft alert sounded from the chamber wall. External systems were requesting status updates. Celira ignored them. The bond did not spread by force, she said. It propagated by recognition. Elias frowned. What does that mean? It means, she said, others felt the shift, not through touch, through presence. As if to confirm her words, Elias felt it again, the faint pressure at the edge of his thoughts. This time it was not fear, it was attention. Delegates are reporting emotional variance, Celira continued. Species long considered neurologically static are showing response patterns outside prediction. Elias stared at her. Because of me? Because of humanity, she corrected. You were simply the first point of contact. The door chimed again, louder this time. We cannot keep this contained, Celira said. The assembly will demand explanation. And if they decide I'm dangerous, Elias asked quietly. Celira met his gaze. Then they will try to remove you. His throat tightened. From the Alliance, from existence, she said calmly. Elias went very still. But, she continued, they will hesitate. Why? Because they are already feeling the change, she said. Fear mixed with curiosity, doubt mixed with hope. She moved toward the door and placed her hand against the control panel. You acted without permission, she said again. My people fear that, but they also need it. The door opened. Outside, the corridor was full. Delegates from multiple species had gathered, their expressions ranging from alarmed to fascinated. Human security looked tense but ready. Celira stepped forward, her posture regal. The human will remain under my protection, she announced. Any action against him will be considered an action against the vilely conquered. A murmur rippled through the crowd. This decision is irrational, an elder delegate said. Yes, Celira replied, that is the point. She turned back briefly, her eyes meeting Elias. Stay close, she said. You are no longer invisible. As they moved down the corridor together, Elias understood something important. Humanity had not conquered anyone. They had not outmatched technology or strength. They had simply shown the galaxy something it had forgotten. Sometimes progress begins with a single, unplanned touch, and the universe would never be comfortable again. The corridors of the vilely conquered were quieter than the assembly hall had been, but the tension was thicker. Every being they passed seemed aware, not just of Princess Celira, but of Elias. Whispers carried in the translation fields. Delegates exchanged glances, some curious, some fearful, as if sensing a disturbance they could not explain. Elias kept his eyes forward, trying not to react. He had grown accustomed to observing, but now he was the observed. Every step felt heavy. He was not only a human, a delegate, or an outsider. He had become something entirely new, an anomaly. The weight of that realization pressed against him harder than any physical load could. Celira walked beside him, her stride calm, unshaken. Yet Elias could feel the subtle tension in her movements, the faint pulse in her aura that hinted at underlying strain. Despite the apparent calm, he knew this was no ordinary day and no ordinary situation. They arrived at a chamber at the far end of the corridors. It was round, smaller than the assessment room, but filled with sophisticated monitoring devices that lined the walls. Soft light bathed the space, making it easier for humans and Virelians to coexist comfortably. The door sealed behind them, cutting off the corridor chatter. For a moment, Elias allowed himself to exhale. Now what? He asked, his voice quiet. Do we explain to everyone what happened? Celira's eyes scanned the room. Explanation will come, but carefully. Many do not understand what they experienced. They only know the rules were broken. She paused. Fear drives their minds more than logic. I broke a rule, Elias said, trying to keep his voice steady. I touched you, that's it. Not just that, she replied. You did it without hierarchy, without fear of consequence, and without expectation of reward. That is why the system adapted. Elias frowned. System. The safeguards, she said. My species developed them over thousands of cycles to prevent domination and chaos. They expected every interaction to follow strict protocol. When the protocol is ignored, intentionally or accidentally, the safeguards activate. They did not know how to handle humans. Elias' mind tried to absorb her words. Thousands of cycles, safeguards, protocols, adaptation. It was more than he could comprehend fully, yet he sensed the weight of it. Humanity had not simply survived first contact, they had changed it. They will want answers, he said slowly. They will want control, she corrected, and that will be more dangerous than any defense mechanism. A soft chime sounded, and the chamber's monitors lit up. Images of the assembly hall flickered on the screens. Delegates were gathered in clusters, speaking urgently among themselves. Elias watched the confusion on the faces of the other species. Fear, curiosity, doubt, they were all there, layered together like storm clouds. They're reacting, Elias said. To me? To you, Celira said. To what humans represent, your species moves without absolute calculation, and that is dangerous to civilizations built on certainty. He swallowed. Dangerous, but good. Celira studied him for a long moment. Good is a relative concept, she said finally, but it is also necessary. Without deviation, civilizations stagnate, they crumble under perfection. Elias nodded slowly. So, I'm the deviation. You are the first point of contact, she said. You are a catalyst. The word sent a shiver down his spine. Catalyst. It sounded harmless at first, but he could feel its weight. A catalyst changed everything, sometimes slowly, sometimes violently, but always inevitably. And they will see me as a threat, he said, because I am unpredictable. Yes, Celira said, because humans are unpredictable and because unpredictability breaks control. He looked at her. And you're not afraid? I am cautious, she said, but I have lived long enough to know the cost of too much control. What you did was reckless, but it may also be the only thing that saves my people from themselves. Elias' chest tightened. He had acted instinctively, not heroically. He had no plan, yet somehow his simple choice had become pivotal. The chamber's monitors flickered again, this time showing more than the assembly hall. Reports from nearby systems began to appear, data points showing subtle anomalies in the behavior of other species. Patterns that had been stable for centuries were shifting. Delegates whispered of feelings they could not name, instincts they could not explain, decisions they found themselves questioning. Celira's eyes followed the monitors. The resonance is spreading, she said, not by touch but by presence. Humans carry something others cannot ignore. Elias' stomach twisted. What does that mean? It means, Celira said slowly, that your species cannot be contained, not by law, not by force, not by fear. You are a moving variable that challenges everything. He swallowed again. The weight of the galaxy felt heavier on his shoulders than any physical burden. He had wanted only to help, and now, without intention, he had changed the dynamics of the entire assembly. The door chimed again, signaling an incoming communication. Celira tapped a control panel and a holographic figure appeared. It was an elder of the Virelian Conquered, someone with authority over all diplomatic channels. Princess Celira, the figure said, voice firm, almost demanding. We must discuss the incident. The human cannot remain uncontained. His presence destabilizes the assembly. Containment is not an option, Celira said firmly. He is under my protection. Protection will not stop the spread, the elder replied. This is unprecedented. We cannot allow a single human to compromise centuries of order. Elias stepped forward, though his voice shook. I didn't want to compromise anything. I only... Silence, Celira said. Do not speak unless you understand the consequences. Elias froze. He understood perfectly. This was no ordinary debate. The assembly was struggling to understand what humans could not calculate, what protocols could not contain. And now he was at the center. The elder's image hesitated. Your Majesty, it said finally, the other species, they are responding emotionally, not rationally. Reports indicate neurological changes that cannot be explained. If this continues, Celira nodded. I know, that is why I am taking responsibility. But you will not dictate my actions. The hologram flickered and vanished. Elias exhaled. The weight did not lift. He was no longer simply a human delegate. He had become the center of a galaxy-wide ripple. Every step he took, every word he spoke, could influence civilizations in ways he could not predict. Celira turned toward him. "You must understand," she said, "that this is not about you personally. It is about what you represent. Humanity carries potential that others fear because they cannot control it. I don't feel like potential," he said. "I feel exposed." "That is part of it," she replied. "The fear, the uncertainty, the courage to act despite it. That is what makes humans dangerous in the best sense." He considered her words. "So being dangerous can be good." "Yes," she said, "when your danger challenges stagnation, when it inspires adaptation instead of destruction." The thought settled in his mind. Humans were not the strongest species, not the most intelligent, not the most disciplined. But perhaps they were the species that could move the galaxy forward because they refused to stop, even when logic said they should. The monitors flickered again, and this time they displayed a wider picture. Delegates from distant systems were sending urgent messages. Behavioral anomalies were being reported across hundreds of colonies. Species that had never altered traditions in millennia were reconsidering their policies. Decisions that had been unchangeable were being questioned. Elias' heart raced. His presence was enough to spark change. Not by force, not by command, but by simple human action. By courage, by instinct, by touch. Celira placed a hand on the central console, her eyes reflecting the light. "You did not mean to start this," she said, "but it has begun. Humanity is no longer a quiet observer. You are now a catalyst species." The words echoed in his mind. Catalyst species, a species that triggers change simply by existing, by being. He realized then that he had a choice. He could freeze in fear, hope that history would not judge him harshly, and wait for others to act. Or he could embrace what humans did best: think, adapt, act. Celira glanced at him. "The galaxy will resist you, it will test you, it will fear you, but it cannot ignore you." Elias nodded. He understood. Not every challenge could be solved by strength or by weapons or even by strategy. Sometimes survival meant standing firm, trusting instincts, and moving forward when everyone else hesitated. The door chimed again. Delegates were gathering outside. They were angry, confused, afraid, but they were coming. They wanted answers. They wanted control. Elias looked at Celira. "Then let them come," she smiled faintly. "Yes, let them see what humans can do." Together they stepped toward the door. Whatever happened next would test not just their courage, but the very idea of what a species could achieve when it refused to follow rules written by fear. And Elias knew that humanity would not step back. They never had. They never would. The galaxy would learn that lesson, one hesitant, daring step at a time. The corridor outside the chamber was crowded. Delegates from countless species had gathered, their postures tense, their eyes wide with uncertainty. Some whispered in alien tongues, others floated in rigid stillness. All of them had felt the ripple, the change, the presence that had been set in motion when Elias had touched Princess Celira. Elias stepped forward with her, heart racing. He had expected confrontation, accusations, maybe even violence, but nothing prepared him for the quiet weight of attention. Every gaze felt like a measurement, every pause a test. Princess Celira moved beside him with calm authority. Her presence seemed to steady him, though he still felt raw, human, and exposed. The glow that had once traced along her skin when he first touched her had long vanished, but something lingered in the air, a subtle, intangible resonance, like the hum of a deep instrument vibrating beneath the floor. It was there, and it was powerful. "Listen carefully," Celira said to the crowd, her voice carrying naturally without amplification. "You have all felt what you cannot explain. A human has acted outside protocol without fear or calculation, and yet nothing was destroyed. Nothing was harmed. The safeguards adapted. This human did not break anything. He created an opportunity." Murmurs spread through the crowd. Some delegates looked skeptical. Others exchanged glances as though seeking reassurance from their neighbors. "An opportunity," an elder voice called. "How can this anomaly be trusted? How do we know it will not cause chaos?" Celira turned her gaze slowly toward Elias. He met her eyes and felt the weight of her confidence anchor him. Because the human acted with courage, compassion, and instinct, not control or domination. That is why the bond did not trigger destruction. That is why the ripple spreads without breaking balance. Humans carry potential that is unpredictable, yes, but it is not reckless in the sense you fear. It is purposeful even if you cannot understand it. The words seemed to quiet the room. Delegates leaned forward, curiosity mixing with caution. Some of the smaller species, those rarely heard in debates, tilted their heads as if testing the resonance for themselves. Elias swallowed. He was still just a human, still inexperienced, still unsure. But the truth in her words gave him strength. The ripple that had begun the moment he touched the princess was spreading faster than he could imagine. He could feel it now, subtle but undeniable. The hesitation in the minds of others, the reconsideration of old rules, the opening of thought pathways that had been closed for centuries. A Virelian elder stepped forward, their body glinting in silver light. "Your Majesty," they said, bowing slightly, "the human is dangerous precisely because we cannot predict him. Protocol demands containment." "No," Celira said firmly, her voice resonating with authority. "Containment will only increase fear. This human is not a weapon. He is a catalyst, and catalysts cannot be restrained without destroying their effect." Elia's stomach tightened. Catalyst. The word had haunted him since she first spoke it, and now, in the presence of the entire assembly, it felt like both a burden and a calling. "Your Majesty," another delegate called out, its voice trembling with fear, "if we allow this influence to continue, our systems may collapse. Our hierarchies will be questioned, our histories challenged. We cannot survive such disruption." "Perhaps not," Celira replied. "Or perhaps your species has survived so long precisely because you have feared stagnation more than change. Perhaps your civilizations are overdue for evolution. What humans carry is not destruction. It is growth. It is adaptation. It is the possibility that your perfect order has missed." The chamber fell silent. Some beings seemed to pulse with uncertainty, their instincts vibrating in the presence of the human's influence. Elias could sense it. He could feel their hesitation, their growing curiosity, their willingness to consider something new. One of the larger delegates, a towering species with multiple limbs and crystalline skin, finally spoke. "If what you say is true, if this human truly carries influence that inspires understanding rather than dominance, then perhaps we have misjudged our own definitions of control. Perhaps we have mistaken fear for wisdom." Elias blinked. That was encouraging. Celira nodded. "Yes. Fear has kept civilizations safe, but it has also kept them stagnant. Humans act without fear of failure, without strict adherence to hierarchy. That is why they can inspire. That is why they are catalysts. They are dangerous not because they destroy, but because they awaken." Across the chamber, murmurs turned into quiet discussions. Small clusters of delegates began to speak to each other, their tones shifting from accusation to consideration. Patterns that had remained fixed for centuries were beginning to bend. Elias realized that this was the moment. The galaxy had been waiting for something it could not define. Perhaps it had always been waiting for humanity. A sudden ripple of tension swept through the assembly. Delegates who had been hostile now hesitated. Those who had been indifferent leaned forward. The influence of humans, though subtle, was undeniable. Celira stepped forward and raised her hand. "I will take responsibility for the human's presence. He will not be restrained, and he will not be harmed. But you must understand what is happening. This is not chaos. This is evolution. You will feel it in your own minds, and it will challenge you to reconsider your assumptions. You may resist. You may fear, but you cannot stop it." The words hung in the air. Then slowly the elder delegate who had first called for containment stepped forward. "If this is true," they said cautiously, "then humans must not be treated as mere observers. They must be acknowledged as active participants. Perhaps even as a species with a unique role." Celira's eyes softened. "They already are. The question is whether you will allow yourself to see it." Elias felt a surge of pride. Not for himself, not for his species, but for the potential of humans to influence the galaxy, not through power or force, but through courage, instinct, and action. "Then it is settled," Celira continued. "Humans will be recognized as catalysts. Their presence will be respected. Their influence will be studied, not feared, and they will be allowed to act." The chamber seemed to exhale. The tension eased slightly, replaced by cautious curiosity. Delegates began to step back, their gestures less rigid, their postures more open. It was not complete acceptance, but it was progress. Elias looked at Celira. "So this is it?" he asked. "The galaxy is changing because of me?" "You did not intend it," she said gently, "but you allowed it to happen. That is enough." He realized then that humanity had always been underestimated. Humans were not the fastest, the strongest, or the most advanced, but they were adaptable. They acted when others hesitated. They moved forward when the rules said to wait. And in a galaxy paralyzed by fear of change, that was the most dangerous and most necessary trait of all. The assembly chamber gradually emptied, delegates returning to their systems with reports, debates, and new ideas. Yet the ripple Elias had started was far from over. Even beyond the chamber, in distant worlds and colonies, decisions that had seemed fixed were now being reconsidered. Policies, alliances, and traditions, all were subtly shifting. Celira turned to Elias as the last of the delegates departed. "You have done something few humans could even imagine," she said. "You acted with instinct and courage, and the galaxy has taken notice. That is your legacy." Elias shook his head, trying to absorb the moment. I didn't do anything heroic," he said. "I just touched you." "Exactly," Celira said, smiling faintly. "You did not plan, you did not calculate. You simply acted when it was necessary. That is what makes humans remarkable. That is what makes them catalysts." For the first time since the assembly began, Elias felt a sense of clarity. Humanity did not need to conquer. They did not need to control. They only needed to act, to stand firm in moments of uncertainty, and to inspire others by example. He glanced toward the chamber windows. Light from distant stars filtered through, casting soft reflections on the walls. The galaxy was vast, complex, and filled with potential. And for the first time, he understood that humans had a role far larger than anyone had imagined, not by force, not by domination, but by their courage to move forward, even when the outcome was unknown. Celira placed a hand lightly on his shoulder. "Come," she said. "The galaxy awaits. You have started something that cannot be undone, and that is exactly what it needs." Elias followed her, stepping into the corridors that led to the future. Each step felt lighter, not because the weight of responsibility had lessened, but because he understood its purpose. Humans had entered a galaxy of fear and control, but they carried something the others could not replicate: instinct, courage, and the unshakable willingness to act even when nothing was certain. And the galaxy would never be the same.